Is my body ready to compete on the ATP Tour? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chuck Smarty. I'm a 23-year-old tennis player. I was at an 11 UTR level before injuries kept me out of tournaments for almost 2 years. I just started competing again, and my goal for 2026 is to get to a level where I know that I can physically compete on the Futures Tour and then beyond towards the ATP Tour. So, how do you know if you're actually on the right track, or how do you know if you're at that pro level? You could guess, you could think, oh, I can run pretty fast, or I can lift this amount of weight, or do this or that. But the best way to figure that out is to have specific physical tests that show you things about how well you do stuff that relates to tennis. And then you can compare your results to other players who you're trying to compete against. And then you can also do the tests again later and make sure that you're on the right track. Doing all the tests that you need to have the complete profile for pro player is a lot. It takes a lot of work, a lot of knowledge, a lot of know-how. And I thought about doing it myself, but I got nowhere. Fortunately, a state-of-the-art performance institute called MaxOut 360 just opened up a few miles away from my house in Sarasota, Florida. They were kind enough to offer a partnership where they would cover all of the testing, including the data interpretation and everything. So I went down there to do the testing, and now I'm documenting the results for me to go over with, and we're gonna see if I'm ready to compete on the ATP Tour. The first part of the testing process was super easy. I got my height and vitals checked, and then I also got my body fat percentage checked in the in-body. Then I moved on to the Pone device. The Pone is just a breath tool that analyzes how you breathe and how your body is able to recover. The next part though, that's when things started getting harder. We moved on to some speed, agility, and endurance stuff. For agility, there was a T-drill, very common athletic drill, tests how well I'm able to cut and change direction. We also did some straight ahead sprints, max velocity, to see how fast I am and how well I can accelerate. We did some repeat sprint tests, which it's just sprinting all out with a little bit of change of direction, but I had to do this over and over again. I think I did it 6 times total. I love to think of myself as super fit, but I'm not gonna lie, I was gassed after these. These types of drills worked speed, agility, and endurance, but to focus purely on endurance, I did a VO2 max test on a bike as well. This was by far the hardest part of the testing. The way it works is you hop on the bike, you start pedaling, and the resistance slowly goes up and up and up, and you have to pedal faster and faster and faster. And at a certain point, your muscles are gone, your lungs are burning, but you just gotta keep going, keep pushing somehow. To test strength and power, we used a staple, the force plate. I was actually looking into getting one of these, but they cost thousands of dollars. These plates measure out how much force and power you're producing. You do various jumping exercises on them, and you can get a pretty good picture of how strong and powerful as an athlete you are. Another thing we did to test power was med ball throws using various ball weights. Med ball throws are really good for tennis because if you can throw a medicine ball hard and far, you can swing a tennis racket super fast. During the testing, I'm the one doing all of the work, running, jumping, throwing, etc. After the testing, the process isn't over. So a big shout out to Alexis for going through the data. He's a lead tester at MaxOut 360. He went through all of the numbers that don't mean anything to me, and he made sense of them and gave us the insights. So now we can see from the results, is my body ready to compete at the ATP level? Let's go over my strengths first. My biggest strength is that I can create a lot of force, which is good. I'm a pretty muscular guy, so I can put that to good use on the court. So creating force lets me run, jump, do all of those things. A good base level of force is critical for power and speed. So that's awesome. I also am naturally very elastic, which is pretty cool. So elasticity is a quality where your body can use stored energy really efficiently. So if I'm running or jumping, because I have really elastic tendons, I can store that energy so I don't have to expend as much effort to keep my body moving or to have a good level of power output, which is super important for tennis because you want to be as efficient as possible, and elasticity lets you do that. Another strength of mine is I have a pretty solid aerobic base. So my cardio has always been pretty good. It's always been one of my strengths. So I'm not surprised by that. So the cardio lets me go doing activity for a long period of time without getting too tired, which obviously for tennis, you need good stamina. So that's good. Now let's move on to the weaknesses. The first weakness is actually kind of counterintuitive, but it's power endurance. I don't have very good power endurance. What that means is, even though I have good cardio, that's just steady state, lower intensity. At higher intensities, power endurance lets you expend a lot of energy like you do in a tennis point and then recover faster. So because my power endurance isn't that low, I'm not recovering as well as I should be if I'm doing things like sprinting or playing points. And I could feel that in the repeat sprint drills. I felt that I just wasn't recovering that fast, and I would start off really strong, really fast, and then I would just drop slowly, slowly, slowly because I need to get better at recovering from max efforts like that. The next weakness I have is I am pretty inefficient with how I'm transferring my force when I serve and then also on my forehand. And I could kind of feel this because I know that I should be able to serve bigger and hit the ball a little bigger than I currently do because I feel pretty strong. So getting more efficient in how I'm transferring my force into power so that I can get more of my shots, that's going to be a critical focus for me over the next few months. And then the last weakness kind of ties into that. It's that I have force dominant tendencies. So what that means is I like to use a lot of force instead of creating power. So basically, it means I take longer to set up, but for me to become more powerful, I need to use my force in a shorter amount of time. The problem is it's really hard to speed that up. You can't just think, oh, I need to go faster to hit the shot. No, you got to actually train your body to do that. So I'm going to have to train my body specifically to be able to express the force in less time. Now we can finally answer, is my body ready for pro tennis? Almost, but not quite. I'm in a pretty good place because I produce a lot of force. I'm very elastic, naturally quick, good aerobic base, etc. But having not exceptional power endurance combined with not using my body efficiently enough on shots like my serve and forehand, those physical qualities, if improved, are going to let me get a lot closer to becoming the best version of myself, and it'll make me a much more competitive tennis player. I want to thank MaxOut 360. This data is very, very useful. Without this data, I would just be in the dark, throwing the darts at the board, praying I hit it. But with the data, I can see exactly, okay, these are the weaknesses I need to improve, and I know that if I improve them, I'm going to give myself a much better chance to reach my goals. The goal for the testing is you see it once now and then you make improvements and then you go back and test again later and make sure you're on the right track. So big shout out to MaxOut 360 again. I'm very grateful for the testing, guys. And yeah, I'm going to be in the gym and on the court working and all these things. See you guys next time.